The problem if we increase the minimum wage to £15 an hour is that we'll have one of the highest rates in the world, that if we apply it to all workers, irrespective of age, as the Labour Party is proposing, it will lead to hundreds of thousands of young people, and disproportionately those from ethnic minorities, losing their jobs or failing to find them. The problem we have, and being frank here, is that many of the 13 million people currently employed by 6 million small businesses, those are restaurants, shops, involved in deliveries, childcare, cleaning, they just don't produce enough added value to justify a wage of £15 an hour. Their employers could not pay this rate and stay in business. So what the Labour Party is essentially proposing is mandating a very high minimum wage that businesses wouldn't be able to afford to pay. They wouldn't get the staff, the labour that they need to grow, and would ultimately fold, leading to higher unemployment.
But is there a case, if not £15 minimum wage, because there will be people up and down this country saying, I very much deserve a higher minimum wage for the work I do. Some of the lowest paid jobs are actually some of the hardest. So is there a case to be made for a higher minimum wage?
Well, I mean, I don't think so. I think if you look at the evidence, certainly there's a lot that comes from studies over in the US to show that increasing the minimum wage does lead to lower employment. It may not mean that staff are laid off within an existing company, but what it will do is deter hiring. And as I say, that's likely to impact the youngest in society, that's likely to impact those who are the poorest in society, of course, and particularly ethnic minorities. So I think there are real dangers with this renewed enthusiasm for governments trying to raise minimum pay levels. And even if those can sometimes be exaggerated, it's still the case that the national minimum wage is a really poorly targeted way of reducing poverty. Most people who are in poverty are not in work, or they only work part-time. So really what the studies have shown is that increasing the minimum wage tends to benefit not those in poverty, but actually households who are in the middle of the income distribution. A significant proportion, students, partners or spouses of higher earners are well inside the top half of the income distribution, and they're the ones who tend to benefit from these increases. So it's very poorly targeted, and we're not actually helping those who I expect Labour Party politicians really want to.
I think it's potentially a little bit jingoistic, isn't it? But is there any argument to say that it might increase productivity? If you're paid more, are you more likely to work harder, do you think?
Well, no, I mean, I think, as I said at the start, the inverse is true, that there's a real danger of increasing minimum wages when workers are not being productive enough to warrant it. And, over the last decade, we have had this productivity puzzle, and that has led to stagnation in wages, and that's had an impact on people's on the cost of living crisis, on people's disposable incomes, and economists are really struggling to establish exactly why it is that productivity has plateaued over the last 10 years or so. That's why they call it the productivity puzzle. It might be to do with our housing market and the fact that we make it very difficult for people to move to areas that they can be more productive. It might be to do with agglomeration effects, which is linked to the housing market, and that makes it difficult for people to work alongside or in close quarters with other people who are productive, and that can in turn increase innovation and creativity and productivity. We're not quite sure why, but I think until we really, and of course it might be our education system, which is just failing to equip people with the skills that they need for the future workforce. But until we address that, we can't really justify just forcing companies to pay their employees more than they're able to afford.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.